Hi everyone and welcome back to Sunday Switch Up, where we have our sales series. If you're new here, you might find the comparisons to certain food products slightly unusual, but you'll get used to it. If you want to save 5% on your eShop credit, then check out switchup.gg and use code SwitchUp so you can save a little bit more on some of these games. We've had some amazing releases this week, including Metroid Prime Remastered, which we reviewed if you want to check that out, but right now we're trying not to add things to our backlog. Yeah. What are the best games on sale? Well, let's find out. First up, with a lovely 66% discount, we have Monster Sanctuary. Now, if you're not sure what this is, it's essentially a side-scrolling monster collecting game that also has Metroidvania elements. You can catch and train your monsters, rename them as well. This one's currently only £5.43 until March the 1st, which, yeah, is the cheapest or matches the cheapest it's ever been. We do have a full review of this on the channel, which hopefully is usually the case for the games we recommend, but there are 111 different monsters. It has a great soundtrack, and in the latest update, they've actually added in some new game modes, so that you can mix up the formula to suit your tastes. You were looking at a 651 megabyte download. You absolutely will not be disappointed if you like the genre. The physical pickup for this week then, in all regions, is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. Now, in the UK, this is a much better deal than it is in the US. In Argos, we have this for just £16.99, that's 66% off. It is also on the eShop here in the UK for 55% off. And this isn't just your standard LEGO experience, there's tons of questing and side questing here. The team did an absolutely brilliant job, and obviously you can play the whole thing in co-op as well, so it's perfect if you want to join a friend to play. The best price in America is 38% off, which is at Walmart, taking it down to $36. And Europe, your best bet is to buy this on the eShop at $26.99. A little expensive, especially compared to some of the bargains we're going to look at, but in terms of overall quality, this is a brilliant game, and there's easily 50 to 100 hours of content in there if you want to find and do absolutely everything. And obviously it's developed and published by Warner Brothers. Then a big thanks to the sponsors of this video, and a message from Glen.
One that I've been playing a bit of lately is PID, which is a puzzle platformer which can be played in either single or local co-op. And you'll need to traverse a number of environments, overcoming environmental hazards and enemies by using the light beams that you can drop onto the surface. These beams will elevate anything in their path, including you, as you'll need to use them in order to move on through the world. As well as this, you have sports and fun, swimming, which is an exercise based game in which you'll need to set yourself daily targets to meet in terms of how far you can swim, and then pick up your joycons and get to it. Little Mouse's Encyclopedia is a game we've mentioned before, and it's an interactive encyclopedia for children based around plants and animals. They'll guide Mouse around a number of environments, interacting with the flora and fauna and learning about them along the way. Finally, there are a couple of more app-based games in AAA Clock 2, which, as well as acting as a customizable alarm clock, also includes a run-and-gun game based on the clock's characters, and new operating system which acts as a basic OS, allowing you to write notes, paint, use a calculator and take on some puzzles. Some of these games are currently on a heavy 90% sale, so it's a good time to check them out, and just thanks once again to Ready Games for sponsoring this episode.
VIGIL The Longest Night harkens back to Bloodborne and Souls experiences, with Metroidvania thrown in for good measure. If you've played Salt and Sanctuary on the Switch, then this will definitely appeal to you. It refines the amount of weapons that you can choose from, but gives each of them their own personalised skill tree. The combat is fast paced, includes a dodge roll, and some of the bosses are just disgusting. They're horrible to look at, but they've got the difficulty just right. It's full of dingy, dark places with gothic references and a good spattering of crimson. There are multiple different endings that you can potentially unlock, and it does have a very strong soundtrack as well. It clocks in at a reasonable 5.2 gigabyte download, and you're looking around about 20 to 30 hours if you want to do absolutely everything in the game, but you could complete it much faster than that if you just rushed through. That one's on sale until February the 26th. Next up then, we have a recommendation from another channel. Switch Corner reviewed this one. We'd played it, but we didn't play it enough to review it, but based on his video, I really enjoyed the look of it, and I think he would happily make it one of his recommendations, and I trust his judgment. so we'll recommend it. It's half price at the moment, and that's until February the 26th, and it describes the main character as a Taiwanese Robin Hood. You're being hunted by the colonial Japanese authorities, and you will quite literally have to steal from the rich and give to the poor. Supposedly it's all based on real life events, and it's all presented in this style of a traditional manga. Now, as far as gameplay, you've got a combination of different elements, including some fast-paced fighting mechanics, allowing you to steal weapons from enemies and use your grappling hook to quickly move around the battlefields. In amongst it all, there is actually a traditional Taiwanese board game using cards, as well as a boss rush mode, and it's all squeezed into a nice 1.7GB download, not too shabby at all. It's only around 6 to 8 hours, so it's not the longest, but thanks to Alex from Switch Corner for that recommendation. It does look like a lot of fun, and I certainly should get around to finishing it. The vast majority of my personal playtime has been spent playing Monster Hunter Rise, and I am beginning to think about that time when we reach the end of it. Now, we've been joined by Asdin of Grinning Wolf Games for a few hunts, and the guy is about level 999, so we've got a little way to go yet. And I think Smiley joined us as well on Friday. If you don't know who that is, he's the guy that won the Switch OLED on the channel. But God Eater is something that I want to get back to finish once I do finally finish Rise. There are a lot of similarities there, except you can have much larger parties fighting these creatures. But the weapon system's slightly different. You've got what's known as a God Arc, which can also be customized as well, but they have transformative abilities. It's very fast paced, and before Rise came out, it was night and day in terms of its fluidity, but I think Rise has kind of closed the gap a little. You're fighting these huge Aragami, and yep, you can play solo if you like, but it's always best to play with other players in these styles of game, if you ask my opinion. Now, it's 14.8GB to download, so that's the big thing really. It's quite a chunker, and about 40 to 60 hours of gameplay. Remember, this is a US only region sale. Then we've got Greak Memories of Azur. This is 60% off. That takes it down to £6.39, and it's an adventure game featuring 3 different siblings that you'll have to switch between to solve all the problems. Now, I think people had a bit of an issue here because it really felt like having a multiplayer co-op would have made more sense in the way that it's designed, because it can feel a little bit clunky switching backwards and forwards. I mean, once you get to grips with it, I still think it's well worth it, and it is an enjoyable experience overall. It's just worth bearing in mind, really. It does feature that beautiful hand-drawn art style and a fully live orchestral soundtrack. I would say if you want to consider this one, then do check out our full review of it. It will just give you a little bit more depth, as I didn't review this one for us. It was either Glen or Asdin, I can't remember. Now, that sale is until March the 1st, so you've got quite a while, and it's 60% off. And there is also a physical of this one, if you're a collector, that can usually be found at a discount. Next up then, we've got the Survivalists, but there's also a deluxe edition. Now, the price you can see here is for the standard. I think the deluxe is only 50p more, so I really should have put that on there. This is a really quirky little survival game where you find yourself on an island, you have to build up your base, but you have lots of monkey companions. Now, you can actually program them almost algorithmically to do your bidding. If you get them to watch you and then go and chop down a tree and take that wood to a specific location, you can then have them do the same thing. If they see you hunt or defend yourself, you can have them as hunters. The limits through which you can actually train them are quite surprisingly high, I guess. Where it fell down a little bit for me is in its reason. You know, what's the point? Why am I on this island? Why am I doing it? It wasn't quite as clear cut, but the actual gameplay was really quite enjoyable. And I guess you could say things like Minecraft are the same in that regard. You create your own experience, and sometimes you also create your own narratives. This one's just 1.0GB, and that sale goes on till March the 1st. Then we've got the lovely stylistic Neon Abyss, which for you roguelite fans out there might really tickle your fancy. It's 60% off, and it allows you to choose items and synergize them for your character. And it will involve you going out on runs, trying to get better items and gear, fighting off bosses. And it's one, again, where I would have loved to have a multiplayer in there, but it is very fun in single player. There's tons of secrets to find here, loads of different item combinations, like literally thousands. And it's another, again, that we've got a full review of if you want to find out a little bit more information. It's just 743 megs, was developed by VIGIL Games, and that sale goes on, as I say, till March the 1st. weirdly, I can still smell my Amiga. I know that's weird, isn't it? I can still smell it. I can still smell my Amiga 500. I used to sit there in my brother's room when he was out, stick the what's it called, the disc in, and I'd sit and play Beneath the Steel Sky, and absolutely loved it, as well as Monkey Island and others. And if there are people sat there saying, you know, what's a floppy disk? It's for us old folk to remember, but you essentially used to have multiple discs, plastic discs, to play your games. Now, Beyond the Steel Sky, I was delighted to see the team come back and create another one, and it does play on nostalgia to some degree. There'll be lots of characters like Joey that they just won't have the same impact unless you're familiar with the original, but still it has its charm and it still works really nicely. Now you play as Foster returning to the city, and I love it. I think it's absolutely great. Does it feel a little bit clunky in terms of some of its design elements? Yeah, it does. There's no denying that. There are times where you may be wandering around thinking, what on earth do I do next? And that's exactly how Beneath the Steel Sky was when I used to play it. Obviously the visuals have changed, but the themes and the flavour, I guess, have stayed the same. At 60% off until March the 3rd, if you're an adventure fan, then you will love this. The hidden gem this week, a very unusual game called Source of Madness. When it released on Switch, it was in a right old state. I remember playing it and there were these huge frame drops. It was just terrible. Now, I know for a fact there have been a number of patches since it launched. In fact, it was going to make one of my old patched up videos. What I will say is it still has frame drops, so it's not 100% fixed, but I'd say it's good enough. Like, they really have done a number of patches on it. What is it? Well, it's a Lovecraftian roguelite, but a bit like Rogue Legacy in terms of the fact that you play as a different descendant each time. You go out on your runs. Everything's got this horrible, quite macabre way of moving. Like everything has a, I don't know, like a physics model and almost an unusual gravitational pull as they try and attack you. Now, that's one of my critiques, is that it can be quite difficult to see when they're attacking. But once you figure out the mechanics of the game and how it works, and you get a few good items on a run, it actually gets very compelling. And, you know, I love me a roguelite. Does this do as well as some of the others? Maybe not, but at this very low price, and being something quite different, I guess, from the masses, it just appeals to me. I like something that's a little bit different, like me. So there are loads of barjans there. Do you go out and stack up on Savaloys, or do you buy a wedge load of games? That's up to you. We did also release another sales video on Friday. It was sponsored, but it was by Untold Tales, and they have some incredible games. There's an owner's discount at the moment in the US regions, and you can literally buy, I think it was something like 11 games, all of them with Metacritics of higher than 75%, for about $8. They were literally like 30 cents each. So maybe go check that video out if you're interested, or don't, because it's just going to kill your backlog and you'll just be like, what am I doing with myself? As you can see on the screen, there are other games that have also been on sale, that are still on sale, that may be worth considering. But I do hope that a lot of you have picked up the Metroid remaster, because man, it's incredible. And again, plug-in, we do have a review of that one. So thanks to all of you. I hope you've had a lovely week. I haven't spoken about it much, but I've had a difficult week in my real life, and that's putting it mildly. But here's to a new week starting Monday, onwards and upwards. Thanks to all of you that enjoy the content. If you want to stick around, then do so. If you don't, then don't. If you like the video, press all the buttons and tick all the things. And thanks to our Patreons and members. We will have a review of the Nixie Wizard, the GameCube Joy-Con, releasing on Monday, so tomorrow, I believe. So if you want to check that out, then stick around. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!